What's up, everybody? It's a beautiful day here in Siesta Key. I'm just chilling on this bench. It is hot. I'm sitting here in the sun, and I wanted to just talk real quick about why home prices are not going down as much as you as a buyer would like them to. Because I think a lot of people are wondering, if the market's crashing, then why aren't home prices going down as much as, why are they just kind of like slowly going down and not just crashing? And crashing is not the right word to use when you're describing a transition in the real estate market, because a crash is like what happens in the stock market. A crash is what happens when you invest in crypto. But when you're talking about a real estate market, it can take years for us to see the bottom. But make no mistake about it, prices have gone down, and I think in a noticeable way. But I think a lot of buyers just don't think they've gone down enough. And I tend to agree with you, because we've got rates now that are double what they were 2 years ago at the peak of our pricing. And it's not just the interest rates, it's the insurance and the taxes and the HOA costs and the general maintenance involved now of owning a house. Everything's gone up so much, and I think people think that the prices just aren't quite reflecting that, and I tend to agree with you. So let's point to the reasons why I think that's true. Why haven't prices gone down as much as you as a buyer would like? And I think the number one reason for that is just a general stubbornness. I think a lot of people that are selling right now, they're talking to their neighbors and their friends, and they're like, oh wow, I got X amount of money for my house a year ago. But a year ago we had rates a lot lower too. But I think stubbornness, if I were to just point to a general reason why. But I think there's also a second reason to this, and I think that second reason is a lot of people bought within the last couple years or within the last 4 or 5 years. And I can see this when I pull tax records, when I'm seeing these houses that I'm showing buyers, and I see that the sellers paid whatever they paid 3 years ago or 2 years ago or 1 year ago. Now they're trying to sell. Well, they're trying to minimize their loss, or at the least not have to bring money to closing and break even. And you as a buyer have to understand something. That's not your problem, that's the seller's problem. But it could potentially affect negotiations. Now, if a seller bought their house a year ago and now they're trying to get the same amount of money for it, they're 99% going to be underwater. Or 99% sure they're going to be underwater. So, but like I said, it's not your problem as a buyer, that's their problem. And I'll just give you an example of what I'm talking about. I currently have a house under contract for a buyer. It's a beautiful property. It's a horse farm, about a 45-minute drive away from where I'm sitting right now in Siesta Key. Absolutely gorgeous property. Well, the sellers bought it a year ago for $1.25 million. They tried to sell it for $1.35 million and then reduced it back to $1.25, which was the original list price, or the sales price of what they paid for it. My buyer now has it under contract for less than that, because I'm a good negotiator and because they have to move. But also, I think that example that I just gave you is why I think a lot of these sellers are in trouble, and they're trying to still get a certain price based on what they paid. And I can't stress this upon you enough. If you're watching this video as a home buyer and you see that that the seller is less willing to move based on what they paid for it, and that price that they're trying to get now is not realistic, it's okay to walk away, because it's not your responsibility as a buyer to bail the seller out. And I guess that may sound harsh maybe to someone who's trying to sell right now, but it's the reality. Because if you were to point to one rule whenever you buy a house, and this doesn't really matter what market you're buying in, if you think that there's a possibility of moving within the next 5 years, you shouldn't be buying, because you shouldn't buy on speculation. Now, there's a lot of agents that were running around back in 2022 telling buyers that prices were only going to go up. And I can be very proud sitting here saying that I'm not one of those people. But I did see buyers that I was working with that were paying a premium because they had to potentially compete with another offer. And I told the buyers at that time, I said, you know, understand something. If you're going to buy this house, just understand that it very well could go down in the short term. And that's something that every buyer needs to understand. So the general rule as a buyer, and it doesn't matter how good of a deal you think you're getting, if you think you're going to be selling within the next couple years, do not buy. There's nothing wrong with me telling people not to buy. Even as a real estate agent, I have no issue doing that. So I'm going to be honest with you guys and as transparent as I can. And I hope that you guys find value in what I'm telling you. And I hope you guys have an awesome day. God bless.